You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie, and he is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, before we launch into it, I know you wanted to say a few words about the passing of Egbert Gay. I know you have had a chance to work with him.
Oh, for more than 10 years.
Wow.
And I was just talking to Emily, our mutual producer, about this. And when I found out about this, I saw Jimmy Zubrus' post on Facebook today, and I thought, this can't be right, because you don't equate that happening to someone like Egbert Gay. But what I find fascinating in all of this is that if you look at all the comments, apart from the shock, there are a lot of people, like real people out there outside of the business, who are just saying, I didn't agree with a single word he said, but he just got to me. People genuinely liked the guy. He was genuinely likable. He was just an amazing force, whether in the studio or outside of it. And the one thing that I find, I'll always remember about Egbert is that I never saw anyone with a more thoroughgoing command of the English language. It's not often you'll hear someone on the radio use the words rancor and solace within the same spoken paragraph, but he would do it on a regular basis. And he never wavered in his beliefs. Some people might say he's playing a cassette, but when he came right down to it, the injustices that he spoke about, the lack of equity, they existed then, they exist now. And we can only hope that his hope that someone will pick up the torch and continue community contact, and basically that there's more than one Egbert Gay out there. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, whether you agree with him or not, we need people like Egbert Gay.
No, it's interesting. That's such a consistent theme, right? I heard Tommy talking about this in the clip you ran on news about disagreeing with someone on a fairly regular basis and still having enormous respect for him at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing was his work ethic. This guy was always working, okay? Like, he was always thinking. He'd be in the studio, he'd be thinking about the paper, he'd be thinking about what he had to do. I remember once, en passant, we were in a break, and I had mentioned that I was thinking about selling my car. At that point, I had a Mazda Tribute. I loved it. And he goes, you want to sell me a truck? And it was basically, he needed something to distribute the paper. He had all kinds of space. Yeah. And every single time I saw him for the next 6 months, he goes, you still selling your truck? This guy, he never stopped working. He was always busy, and yet, he just exuded this, I don't know, maybe the word is goodness. You always felt better, even if you didn't agree with him, you always felt better when he was there.
Yes.
And it was very rare that you would be talking to Egbert Gay on any topic whatsoever, and the conversation didn't finish with you smiling.
We were talking to Maya Johnson earlier and how he was such a mentor to her, and I was saying, I can only imagine how many people feel the same way she does, like what an impact he had on them in terms of, because he just made you feel good all the time. So imagine when he's making you feel good, but he's also fostering you to become the better version of yourself. Just a truly remarkable man, a big loss.
Absolutely, and with all due respect to CJAD, I know, and accurately so, he's referred to as a contributor, but man, oh man, from where I'm sitting, Egbert Gay was and is a part of CJAD's DNA. I can't imagine the past 10 years that I knew him without him being there, without his voice just sort of cutting through sometimes and making some points that always merited repetition.
Yeah, and for people, by the way, just hearing this, we were, of course, speaking of Egbert Gay, who tragically passed away from a heart attack over the weekend. He was only 67. And Jim, as you described him, very much part of the CJD family, the DNA here. All right, let's shift to some of the news today. Big plan, Bernard Drainville today. I'm going to play my favorite quote in a second, but so the deal is here, and I love the way you phrased it. His plan, this is in the education system, is to improve teaching French, but to eventually come up with a plan to teach French at the same time. So it's kind of vague in a sense. Listen to him explaining it here.
One of the ideas that will be submitted to the group of experts is the idea that students should write every day. They should write something, not necessarily a long text, but they should write to have a better handle on how to write in French. We should also consider the idea of integrating Quebec culture into the teaching of French. So it could be books, it could be movies, it could be songs. the quality of the French language in the classroom is not only the responsibility of French language teachers, it's also the responsibility of all the teachers.
Okay, so everyone's going to get involved. We're all going to, I guess in French school anyway, we're going to learn more about Quebec. I thought that was already part of the curriculum. I guess not. But Jim, here's my favorite quote. He was asked at one point about the difference, because there's a huge one, the contrast between how well students do in the English sector, right, and how well they do in the French sector. And the French sector is at around 70%. The English is above 90%. Mm-hmm. And when he was asked to explain it, he said this.
I have no idea.
There you go. All right. That's what he actually said. There's no idea why that happens.
Else, you have to appreciate Monsieur Drainville's candidness. Mm-hmm. However, I can answer that question very simply. When you're a little person, and most of our listeners, I'm sure, when you're in elementary school, certainly, you would have spelling bees, and you would learn different words and what those words meant, but certainly how to spell them. The thing is, written French is so, relatively speaking, is so much more complex and difficult than written English that you, in the French sector, whether it was in Quebec or in France, they would have what's called a dictée, literally a dictation. And you would hear the teacher read, and you would have to write down what you heard and get your punctuation and your accents and your dashes and the whole 9 yards correct. And, down the road, theoretically, this would have been, drilled into your head. You'd know how to write proper French. Now, fast forward, it's 2023. It's not just in English that we're seeing the language shortened, swiping left, more abbreviations. It's also in French. And if you're online and you're reading something in French, you see a lot of French words scrunched down almost into initials. It's a tough road to hoe. And the idea here that if we can go back to the classical kind of approach to actually carrying this out, good on us. But it's interesting that Monsieur Drainville, it is a plan, but he wants it's a plan sort of orientations. And he wants those orientations to be bounced off, once again, gee whiz, welcome to Quebec, a committee of experts who will look at it, sign off on it or not. Long story short, he doesn't expect to see this thing get off the ground before 2025. So between now and then, I'm just giving the listeners a heads up, at least until 2025, you can continue to be blamed for the decline of French, written or spoken, until the plan has a plan and it's carried out.
I feel like I have to mention at this point, when we're going through those numbers, 70% French success rate, 90%. The Anglophones, the English sector also does way better in French.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, how are we hurting the French language if we're doing better in French than the Francophones?
There are problems, and this is a really frustrating thing.
Yeah. About
what I do and living here, because we get caught up in this ridiculous smokescreen of identity and language and politics and who did what to whom in 1759. The fact is there are real problems in Quebec's education system. The fact is there's a shortage of teachers, there's a shortage of expertise, and people are getting burned out. In the meantime, don't forget, the pandemic hit the French sector a lot more decisively than it did the English. And they're still sort of like trying to get things sorted out. But in the end, the question now is, are you going to school to, make that next step, do whatever, or is it simply to complete your dictate? And that's a very fundamental question. What exactly constitutes an education in Quebec? Because if it's ideology, because if it's, recycling the same, boomer era list of grievances and calling that Quebec culture or whatever, I got news for you. It's not going to work, especially when the importance / inevitability of the English language being a part of Quebec life daily, like it or not, is going to become more and more apparent with each passing year.
By the way, Jim, a couple of texters here with respect to dictée in school. This one says, 4 kids in school, I can confirm dictées are still a thing.
Oh, they are.
They're still happening.
Oh, yeah, they are.
So there you go.
Well, they're still happening. Maybe someone should tell the minister, because that is what he's saying. He's saying, I want kids to write every day in class. So I don't know if he means if typing on a keyboard would constitute that as well.
No, it happens, but it happens, I can only tell you from the English sector, but in the English sector, they have dictées all the time, written with good old pencil and paper.
But and so I was about to say that's the problem, but that's the difference. French, English is individual word spelling bees. You take all the little pieces and you put them together in a line in their proper order, and that's fine. You have to do that in written French, plus all the punctuation, plus to make sure whatever tense or God help us gender your verb is, right? And I'm still trying to figure out what makes the table feminine. But the bottom line here is it is immensely more difficult to master it than it is English. And, dictates will help, but I guess it's not enough for the time being, because apparently we have a plan to get a plan for people to learn how to write French.
So again, Mr. Drainville, what's the idea? Do you have any idea why it does so much better on the English side than on the French side?
I have no idea.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll keep working on that. James, thank you.
You better hang on to that. Buddy.
Oh, I'm keeping that. I'm keeping that. I'm keeping that along with Valerie Planting. I can assure you Cavendish is happening. I got that one as well. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adamant.